Hello, everyone. My name is Jordyn Smith, and I am the voice and the astrologer behind the YouTube channel and webpage Nonconformist Conscience. I posted yesterday, excuse me, the written report for this week. If you're someone who likes to read, you should just go to my website and subscribe to the newsletter, and it should send it to you. So, this week, we have some really beautiful energy. I feel like it's segueing off of this Pluto entering Aquarius. It's also segueing off of the last full moon. It's just, I love it. So, on the 29th, and this is going to be felt throughout this week. This is, we're going to have a couple of days till midweek where we're still going to feel this energy and be able to consciously work with it. But on the 29th, Venus in the sign of Capricorn entered a disseminating trine to Jupiter. And as she's doing this, she is sextile Saturn in Pisces, and Saturn in Pisces is sextile Jupiter. So it's pulling in all of this energy. And we also have a Virgo moon that opposed Neptune. And I'm not going to really talk about that since I'm recording this on the 30th. But if you want to go back and read, you can. So let me talk about this Venus trine to Jupiter. I talked a little bit about this last week, but I'm going to dive into it a little bit further. So a disseminating trine is really where we get to put whatever it is out there. We're called. It's being reflected that this is some type of thing that we're meant to show up fully and wholly within our society, within our life. So Venus and Capricorn in this trine to Jupiter really speaks to being integral. That's the Capricorn piece, and being authentic. That's the Jupiter piece. And Jupiter in Taurus has really been about just expanding upon what it is that feels authentic to us. Our inner relationship to self, like fortifying this. And Venus here, being the ruler of this Jupiter, really says to commit to this, to have integrity, to show up in the world as you are in your most authentic expression. And here's the thing, is like, we evolve, so that can change. That's why this is Jupiter. It expands. We're always expanding if we're consciously working on ourselves and wanting to evolve. And so that's why we can always look back and reflect. This is the Capricorn piece, and see like, oh, I'm not who I once was. And this Venus trine Jupiter in a disseminating phase is really about applying everything that you've been learning about yourself that resonates in a way where you can show up in your life as your own authority. And what I mean by showing up in your life as your own authority is very much about your own sovereignty, staying whole unto yourself through being integral and understanding what your own personal truths are, what your own personal needs and values are. When we have healthy self-esteem, which is part of Taurus, we understand what it is that we need, and we are able to meet ourselves and do that for ourselves. And so this is a week where things can be coming up to test us a little bit, seeing as there's all this Capricorn energy. And Capricorn is really about self-determination and being self-determined to not be who we once were, or being self-determined in some sort of area in our life. But when we're looking at Venus and Capricorn in a disseminating trine, to Jupiter and Taurus, it's really this call to make sure that we are standing in our authority and we aren't creating expectations of others. We're able to then, we're standing in our own authority with Jupiter and Taurus. We're able to meet our own needs. We're able to be self-reliant. We're understanding who we are, who we've changed into, how we've metamorphosed. And that's through the polarity point of this Jupiter, which is Scorpio. So it's really also about all of the information that we have been understanding about ourselves and our values and the things that have gone on in our lives lately and where things have been highlighted and doing the inner work. This is really a conversation that says to take that wisdom, Capricorn, and to show up authentically, to take that wisdom that you've learned and self-reflected on and to have a metamorphosis where you can show up authentically. And then it's really interesting that Venus is in a last quarter sextile to Saturn, and Jupiter is in a crescent phase sextile to Saturn. So Jupiter in a crescent phase sextile to Saturn is like the understanding the expansion process of our inner relationship to self is now wanting us to apply it to life, to create a new structure. And this also helps us to dissolve these prior dynamics about maybe giving our power over to another or where we couldn't meet our own needs. And then the last quarter sextile from Saturn to Venus is really speaking to put this out there, to come as you are. The expression for this symbology to me is accurately expressed in the quote, to thine own self be true. This is part of that Jupiter and Pisces dynamic. And then just showing up and being your own person in life. So on the 30th, which is today, Mars in the sign of Capricorn is in a disseminating trine to Uranus. The moon is in Libra and a last quarter square to Venus. It will, it makes this last quarter square to Venus. As I'm talking right now, it is about to do that here in about an hour. And it is 1:17 p.m. Central Standard Time. So Mars in this disseminating trine to Uranus is really, we've talked about this. I've said it before. If you know the work of Jeffrey Wolf Green and EA, you have an understanding at the very least that Mars are the desires that emanate from within us that help us to evolve. So wherever this Mars is falling in your chart by house is going to give you more information about how this can play out. But Mars in Capricorn can really be about wanting to really get to the bottom of what we desire and then to do that. So if you have this suppression dynamic or repression dynamic going on because of religion, religious beliefs, cultural stigmas, any of these things that deal with society or the constructs within them, this disseminating trine to Uranus is really about breaking free from the chains that bind you or the structures that bind you as a way to transform our inner relationship to self. So if there's something that you have been really wanting to do or really wanting to go after, but you feel like maybe some type of belief or prior experience is creating a sense of fear. This really speaks to, if this is a repeating theme that is getting echoing louder and louder in your mind, seeing as this is Uranus and Taurus, and like the inner voice is just, it's becoming more repetitive about what action, Mars, to take, what steps to take, what choice to make. This week can really help us liberate from the dynamics that keep us from doing that, from impeding on acting on those desires. And it's through not only listening to what the inner voice is saying, but also through objectifying and getting down to the why. Like, I'm feeling this way. Maybe I'm feeling really scared. Maybe I'm an astrologer and I want to become an astrologer, and I've been practicing and studying, but I'm really afraid of what judgments might be made, right? But I have this desire. This can really help us to objectify where that fear comes from and what it's correlating to, and where that sense of insecurity is ignited within it. It helps us to really dive into those emotional dynamics so that way we can heal that. And then that way we can create this action. The disseminating trina is really beautiful because it asks for us to definitely put into action, into motion something through a full integration process. Same with like the crescent phase sextile that is still going on at this time from Saturn to Jupiter. So it's really pulling this in, like, what feels authentic for you? What are you wanting to do in life? What's getting in the way of that? Where does that come from? And how can you do something different? And so it's about, really, all of this Capricorn energy is about making correct judgment. Are we going to make a judgment based on how we've been conditioned that creates this fear because we're afraid of something? Or are we going to liberate ourselves from that dynamic and go after what it is that we're really wanting to and committing to it? And are we being self-determined to do so? And as we act on these desires, it pulls in Saturn and Pisces, which allows us to culminate these long-standing dynamics of maybe where we felt that we couldn't act on some type of desire, stemming from how we were raised or whatever conditioning. With the moon in Libra in a last quarter square to Venus, and with Jupiter being ruled by this Venus, the moon is ruled by this Venus, Uranus is ruled by this Venus. The last quarter square between the moon and Venus is really, I have a last quarter square. I think I mentioned this in one of my prior videos recently, but it's this really interesting phase and aspect that has a Uranian feel to it, or a Uranian feel to it, where we can either hold on to something so tightly, or we can really create liberation by throwing off anything that is not in resonance anymore. And so a moon in Libra squaring Venus and Capricorn can be about really throwing off relational dynamics of where you feel like you can't be in your own sense of authority. This is a day where you can create boundaries, and that's part of showing up authentically. And also, maybe that's doing something you haven't done before. Maybe you're someone who's lacked boundaries, and this whole process with the South Node and Libra has been about really understanding, like, what are my boundaries? In order for me to understand that, I need to know how, like, what's going on inside of me and what I value and what I need. and to be self-sufficient. That way I can tell people exactly what it is that I'm either needing. And a need doesn't have to be a projected expectation. This can really be about throwing that off and being one's own authority and being self-determined to do that and to be self-reliant. Or having emotional dynamics come up today where you're realizing, oh, maybe I got, boundaries were blurred or something came up and I need to ground back into my authenticity, into my nature. But this is really like, what do you want to throw off dealing with relational dynamics? And like I said, these relationships don't have to be one-on-one romantic partnerships. They can be anything. Maybe you work and there is stuff going on with your boss and you're really afraid to show up in your authenticity and to state how you're feeling or something that you're seeing, especially if it's an injustice or there's not fair play. There's a whole variety of dynamics that can come into play, but really this is about not holding on to the past and actually stepping up and being your own person, really claiming your own authority. And again, it pulls in the energy of Saturn and Pisces, this culmination process of all of these prior dynamics where imbalances have occurred, where maybe another way that I'm seeing this is imbalances might have been created and you're coming to have an understanding so you can throw them off and then culminate or dissolve that type of structured emotional dynamic within you, is where imbalances can be created in relational dynamics of all sorts because we are denying our personal truth, which would be Jupiter, or our own authority, our own ability to ask and answer our own questions and to make correct judgment calls. So this is whatever is coming up. If an imbalance is highlighted, this can be kind of there's tension with this transit, but it's fleeting. Awareness can come in, especially Venus will still be trining Jupiter, and Mars is trining Uranus. So it's like there can be this burst of an aha moment of connecting dots, sort of say, about yourself and your inner reality and knowing what you need to correct or self-improve upon. This moon at this time is going to be in conjunct Jupiter. So it really speaks to, and it's going to be in conjunct Saturn, and it's forming this yacht as this happens. So there's really this propensity for, if something external happens to trigger, it's meant for us to self-improve upon, for us to understand ourselves, to listen to ourselves, to reflect, to objectify, and to go deep and make correct judgment as a way to throw off prior dynamics and to culminate what's wanting to culminate. So you've got to think, Pluto entered Aquarius. It just came out of Capricorn. It's going to go back later this year. Saturn is in the sign of Pisces. So there is this dance, and we have strong Uranian energy during this whole thing, but there is this dance of needing to release the past, but in order to do that in true Saturn, Capricorn, fashion, we're needing to really reflect first and to kind of look back. And that way we can move forward through this liberation process, through this awareness, which is a great Aquarius Uranus word, of what happens. And then through that awareness, this transformation can continue to take shape within ourselves. This transformation of our own inner relationship to self, Uranus and Taurus. So this is a day and a week where we can be tested to see if we're self-determined a little bit. Oh my goodness, I'm hot. But where we can be tested to see if we're self-determined. It's also how I see that moon in Libra, which is going to be aspecting the next couple of days, the next day, Mercury and uh Mars as well, is that we're really testing ourselves to see if we are self-determined to throw off anything. These are going to be all last quarter squares. So little things can come up, especially with this yod really igniting this at the time. Whenever this is starting to really be felt as the square from the moon to Venus is perfected, is that this can be where external events could be fated as a way for us to create self-improvement and learn how to work with others, or how we view ourselves as an equal. It really depends on your own personal chart and where this is falling in. But whatever it is meant for growth. And it is meant for us to really throw off some type of dynamic, to release it. I love the expression when I learned about Aquarius and Uranus and the 11th house, is that this is really about shedding the skins of the past where we've over identified with some type of dynamic. These are Jeffrey Wolfgreen's words that are just burned into my brain, because holy crap, has that been something in my life? But the over identification, when I'm looking at these transits, comes from how we've been conditioned. Each one of us chooses what we're wanting to come into, because we're wanting to have the conditioning of where we left off, what we were working on prior to. And this can show up in so many different ways. Um, and to give an example, because I think that this could be really important to reflect on, why did I choose this family system, this place I live in? Why? Because we're still supposed to be reflecting, and we have all of these instances, these little gems that could be popping up for us to have a deeper understanding of that in order to culminate these long evolutionary cycles, dealing with relationships and the way that we've structured reality. It's like our consciousness is wanting to take a new form right now, and that is really reflected in that Saturn and Pisces, and then Pluto entering Aquarius. Whatever is needing to be liberated, anything we've over identified with, that we're coming to understand through the Aquarian awareness of our higher mind. That's where this culmination process can really happen, is through that liberation process. So a great example I have is of really understanding why someone would choose a certain family is, and this is more of an extreme one, but it just gives you a really good understanding, is I had a client and a family member, both who have Pluto square the nodes, and very similar charts, but one of them on a soul level was choosing to not evolve, and it was wanting to not evolve through understanding their emotional dynamics, because there was so much trauma around that from prior lifetimes. So what ended up happening as this person was talking to me about their family is that this person doesn't even know how to access their emotional dynamics, because they came into a family who is extremely oppressive, very patriarchal. You don't say anything outside of this family. You don't tell anyone our business. If you're crying, you need to suck it up. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. And then it makes you understand, if you're on a soul level refusing to evolve through the emotional dynamic, what better family to choose than a family who conditions you to not access that? And so now, as an adult, as they're having a major transit happen that's activating their Pluto and their square, they are experiencing inertia, and also they're starting to ask themselves, like, how can I, it's because the nodes are actually squaring one of their planets, and they were wanting to understand, like, the transiting nodes, sorry, they were wanting to understand why things were going on in their life. There was crisis happening. The north node is falling in their sixth house. That south node of Libra was falling in their 12th, activating their Venus that's squaring that. And so it was actually intended, it was fated for them to make a new choice in order for them to resolve that skip step that they have so prominent in their chart. And this is more of an extreme case because all of this crisis happened to, like, force this to start happening. So it's also this really cool way to look at evolution and source, is that it really is wise, kind, and loving, even if it doesn't always feel like that. It wants us to evolve, even if on a soul level we're choosing not to. So that's just one of the ways. And I want you guys to, if you are wondering why some things are going on, it's really imperative right now to look at, like, why did I choose that type of dynamic growing up? And then how did that affect my relationships growing up? And what are my relationships like now? Can I see the evolution, or can I see how maybe there's still a common thread, but I've been working on it and I'm getting there? And, it's just really important for us to understand this dynamic whenever we are wanting to understand ourselves, especially through an evolutionary lens. So, this Mars in a disseminating trine to Uranus, while the moon is in a last quarter square to Venus and is in a yod with Jupiter and Saturn, is really having us want to throw off old beliefs, old values, old needs that have been conditioned. And we do that through self-reflecting and understanding where imbalances have been created, and then taking responsibility for ourselves. Like, it's great to blame other people. I think it feels good if you're not wanting to grow. But at some point, we have to do a Venus in Capricorn and say, I'm going to take responsibility for my own healing, for my own relationship to self. And I'm going to be determined to do so and to get to the bottom of all of this. So this week can really bring that in. But because there's so many sextiles and trines going on, it's more of this ease of integration. It's more of, if you've been consciously working on yourself, this can really bring forth aha moments, or like dots, seeing the dots align, or strings attached to certain things, and really coming into an awareness. That way we can have a transformation. That way we can liberate from those dynamics. So then on the 1st, Mercury will be in a last quarter sextile to Neptune. And this last quarter sextile is really, whatever it is, whatever knowledge, whatever messages that you're coming to understand, it's meant to be integrated fully. And this can help with this dissolving process, Saturn ruling that Mercury. So it's really, this week can be about not only looking at our relationships, not only looking at our desires, but it's also understanding what better way to understand our conditioning than to really start reflecting on the knowledge or the messages that we received through the teachings that really started to condition us. And when we reflect on that, we can see if we really want that to stay, like if that resonates, or we can have this dissolving process. It's also where we can, as we've been clearing out room, we can have more knowledge come in right now, more messages received by external or internal dynamics, where it really feels like it has the ability to bring faith to us or bring some type of, it's almost like an exhale, right? Even though that's more Uranian energy, but Mercury is going to be trining Uranus, so it brings that energy in, but it's definitely like we could have new information that resonates with us, new teachings, more understanding, developing more language to express ourselves, all of these things. And then the key is to, does it align with your values? Can you be integral walking that path? What other knowledge are you wanting to learn about? All of these things. And this can really, Mercury and Capricorn can help us commit to this. It's maybe you've been searching for some type of teacher, and that teacher can show up at this time. That really helps in this dissolving process as a way to help you restructure. This can also be where, when we reflect back, we can see where some type of knowledge that was passed on to us might be um more of a delusion, right? Like that's kind of delusional. Like that, why was I even taught that? I think pretty much that's a universal experience, that at some point we come across some type of thing that conditions us, and then as we reflect we realize like that's not even honest or true, or like that's so delusional. This can be where we can really understand that dynamic and how it's affected our sense of self and all of these other areas of our life. And so this is also happening as the moon enters Scorpio, and that moon is going to be ruled by Pluto and Aquarius. And the moon will trine in a disseminating trine to Saturn later in the day. And so when I am thinking about this and reflecting on it myself, and what's coming to me is, if we're really wanting to get to the bottom of this dynamic as a way to culminate, to dissolve, to understand what's actually true, this can be where reality, like we're met with reality, okay? Like the truth of reality is, the moon in Scorpio wants to expose. It wants to expose some dynamic, another layer of the onion to be peeled back, dealing with our emotional and psychological makeup. And Mercury in this last quarter sextile to Neptune really helps us to get to the bottom of this. Like that way we can have new information about how to be in our own authority, or maybe we're receiving information that helps us to make a better judgment call, or we're reflecting on our own emotional and psychological makeup, and we're realizing what really needs to go, what insecurity we have that was stemming from some type of conditioning. When the moon trines Saturn in a disseminating phase in the later part of the day, this just really emphasizes like Pluto wants us to like penetrate, not Pluto, Scorpio wants us to penetrate and get to the bottom of a psychological, emotional dynamic, some type of inner limitation within, what something that you're confronting within yourself. Like that is what I think about a moon and Scorpio, is this is ruled by Pluto and Aquarius, so it's also pulling in Uranus and Taurus, but it's in a disseminating trine to Saturn and Pisces. Part of this restructuring of our consciousness is really feeling whatever it is we need to feel on an emotional level as a way to get to the bottom of, why is this happening? What does this mean? And then with the moon being ruled by Pluto and Aquarius, we can really liberate from these old structures, from this old conditioning. by really getting to the bottom and exposing something. And then with the ruler of Pluto and Uranus and Taurus, again, it all feeds back to we're in this major transformative process of how we inwardly relate. So what better way to transform our relationship to self or how we inwardly relate than through dissolving old structures within Saturn and Pisces. Like, what better way to dissolve old ways of emotionally relating to oneself? Like, this really can be a day where this happens, where we feel it, where we have understanding, where some type of inner confrontation that exposes something that's wanting to be liberated from within the soul as a way to culminate long-standing psychological and emotional instances or things within inside us, things that can be revolving around our security or where we feel the most insecure in life. All of this can be really just a wellspring this week, especially for those who've been consciously working, like with trying to reflect and like maybe they're still feeling like there's something there, but it's just like I don't know how to get to it. Like, I can have this sense of feeling sometimes that I'm about to understand something that I've been reflecting on, and it's usually whenever I'm to the point of like, why is this not happening? Why am I not understanding? Why? And like being self-determined to still reflect and want to expose something or wanting to understand, that's whenever it comes to me. And it's usually in transits like this. If I've been working on it, I have this big breakthrough from like this Capricornian dynamic. I have Capricorn in the 8th, so it pulls in the Scorpio where I've resisted something or I haven't been able to access it. Maybe it's been repressed. All of a sudden, because I've had the willingness and the courage to want to expose that, it becomes exposed. And then I can take the next steps that I need to take after that. So that's kind of this feeling, but it's not something that is, these are trines. These, we could be lazy and just not want to do the work, but that creates external events that can be triggered when that happens. If you consciously work with this energy and have been, and you've been on this journey of like self-discovery, even on this day, this is where it's just like things start clicking, dots start connecting, and like an understanding can be had, so a full integration can prosper from that. This is really interesting too. I printed out the chart and I'm looking at it, sorry. Is that the sun in Aquarius on this day is going to conjunct the south node of Neptune. And I want to talk about this a little bit because I feel like this is really important and just emphasizes the things that I've been talking about, how important it is to listen to the inner voice, that we're in a transformative process. We're trying to really start some type of new cycle right now. And that happened when Pluto and the sun did conjoin, and it started that initiation process. And so the south node of Neptune is in Aquarius and the sun conjuncts it on the 1st. The sun is where we self-actualize. It's like if you look at your own chart and you understand where you've come from and where you're trying to go, that sun gives us a point, a place to really have this integration process of how we filter life, not through our emotional dynamics, but it gives us purpose. Okay, our emotional dynamics would be our moon, but it gives us this purpose. Like everything that I've gone through, it's the hero's journey, right? Everything I've gone through is for me to self-actualize through what this is saying, this placement. And the transiting sun helps us do that whenever we correspond it to the house that it falls in our own chart. But the sun in Aquarius right now is speaking to really wanting us to self-actualize through a liberation process, through observing and transforming and coming into awareness so we can transform, and to throw off anything that isn't resonating with who we are, who we naturally, authentically are. So with the sun conjunct the south node of Neptune, and both of those being ruled by Uranus and Taurus, this is so powerful. I feel like I've talked about this before, but Neptune is like the whispers that emanate from our soul, right? Neptune, Pisces, 12th house. That naturally sextiles Taurus, the second house, and the inner side of Venus. And that is about our inner listening, how we listen to ourselves, how we talk to ourselves, what we hear inside of us. It's all of these things. And we can really access how to go out into life actualizing self if we pay attention to that. And that is directly correlated, that inner voice is emanating from within our soul. That would be Taurus opposing the eighth house, Pluto, Scorpio, all of that. And then that natural sextile from Taurus to the 12th, Pisces, Neptune, is about connecting with source and how we are divinely guided on a soul level as a way to help us evolve. And all we have to do is to pay attention to our inner voice. And furthermore, everyone has their south node in Aquarius, and you have a Uranus in your own chart. But Uranus is where we have our higher intelligence. It's our individuated conscious. It is also about our long-term memory. It's all of these things, right? When since Uranus is the ruler of that south node of Neptune and Aquarius for everyone, it's right now transmitting through Taurus. It's really important to pay attention to what is going on. What are you hearing? What keeps coming up for you that gets more frequent? That is something that is emanating from within you that is wanting you to actualize, to the necessary steps that your soul is wanting you to take right now. So with the sun on the south node of Neptune being ruled by this Uranus and Taurus, we are meant to not only pay attention to this, but to self-actualize the sun through this. And this will help with transforming our relationship to self. It helps us be more self-reliant, Taurus. It helps us have healthier self-esteem. It helps us also understand that we come from something much larger than ourselves and that we're connected to something bigger. And it also plays a key role in our own emotional maturation. It helps us to emotionally validate ourselves. I have experience with this as well. I used to never listen to myself. And whenever there were key things in my life that became really loud and clear, I would be so afraid. It can be this Aquarius thing, right? Because that naturally squares Scorpio, and that's like our comfort and what feels secure is we're being guided. I was being guided to take an action, to do something. And I had this message in my mind that just, this idea, right? That can be this thing. Uranus, Aquarius, it can be an idea of something that we're supposed to be doing. And it just kept getting bigger and bigger. And even though I was terrified to do it, I had faith. And whenever I did that, it strengthened my relationship to self. It made me trust my inner voice. It made me trust my inner voice. And it made me feel so much more connected to source because I knew that that was connected to source. And so it deepened my relationship, my spiritual relationship. And it is part of co-creation if you think about that. The north node of Neptune is in Leo for all of us, ruled by our natal sun and the transiting sun right now. That's about co-creation. And what better way to co-create with source right now? All of us, you can test this if there's something that's been coming up, than to have faith in ourselves and the inner voice and know that it's coming from something much larger than ourselves that we're connected to. And it's emanating from our soul, which is connected to that. And if we can allow like our kind of ego to just shut up for a minute, all of the fears, all the anxieties, all the things, I like to call it the committee upstairs that doesn't want to shut up. If we can zone in on that thing, that idea, that's where we really can have this liberation process of the past, because we're doing something we've never done before. We're evolving, we're growing. And it's this beautiful way of understanding that we really all do have co-creation with source. None of us is better than the other. Someone else, doesn't have this gift and I do. It is something that is inherent in each one of us on a soul level. And all we have to do is access that by listening and paying attention and observing this. And if something starts repeating and it gets more frequent, that is your best way to know that you need to follow that. That is something, some type of inner guidance from your higher intelligence, from your soul, connected to source, that is saying, go this way. And so this week can really have all of these aha moments, and then also propel us through what was wanting to be initiated at the original conjunction with Pluto and the sun. And this has the propensity to help us dissolve. It's dissolving through liberation. The other way that you can understand this is when the sun entered into Aquarius, Pluto entered right after. And so the sun is stationary. And so this is a balsamic phase. So it's wanting us to, again, wrap up and culminate a whole cycle through a liberation process. That's really like very telling. So on the 2nd, we have the moon still in Scorpio, ruled by Pluto, in a last quarter sextile to Venus, and in a last quarter square to the sun. And this really reflects, like, as we work and confront inner limitations and reflect on what that means for us in our personal relationship to self, we get to self-actualize through the liberation process. And so again, these are last quarters. It's about throwing off these old dynamics as we come into this awareness, these emotional, psychological dynamics of where we felt imbalanced, where we've given our authority away, where our conditioning has affected our own sense of authority, all of this. And again, I'll say it again. It transforms our relationship to self and it culminates. There's a dissolving process. And then on the 4th, Mercury is going to enter Aquarius and conjunct Pluto. And that is ruled by Uranus and Taurus, and it is going to be trining Juno. So Mercury in Aquarius is really where we can have a lot of ideas and new information come in that spark ideas. Can be things that we maybe were working on years ago, and all of a sudden we have this idea to pick it back up. Maybe we were researching something at one point in time. Anything, it can, but it's lightning bolts kind of understandings. And here's the thing is, Mercury, balsamic to Pluto, while still in the sign of Capricorn, 29 degrees, we've been reflecting on our conditioning. We've been learning, you know, Mercury about our conditioning through self-reflection, through being self-determined to be responsible to our relationship to self. Now is the time where this type of thinking, old way of thinking, is culminating. And Mercury conjunct Pluto and entering a new phase in Aquarius is about really liberating from all of that dynamic, all of those dynamics, and then how that can transform our relationship to self by sparking new ideas, sending us messages about what it is we're supposed to do, and really pulling in that dynamic of what I talked about with the sun on the south node of Neptune the day before, 2 days before. And technically, it will still be conjunct that south node of Neptune during this time. It'll be 2 degrees within it still. So it's really important. This is where we can feel more energized too. Like if we've been feeling a little sluggish, like our thinking has been melancholy because we've been, trying to self-reflect. This is where we can have a little bit more energy, where we can have more of, oh, I want to go look at this. I want to go study that. I had this idea. I want to set it into motion. All of these things, it can kind of give us a little bit of a boost. So this is your week, and I will be back next week. Oh, I forgot. Uranus trining Juno. And Juno's in the sign of Virgo, ruled by that Mercury. This is in a first quarter trine. So if you have felt like you have been stagnating on knowing something that you're needing to liberate from, this trine from Uranus to Juno, Juno being ruled by that Mercury that's now in Aquarius, can really help us have deep insight and the ability to help us to self-improve, to understand what it is we're supposed to be working on that feels purposeful for us. It helps us to devote ourselves to that. It's really about devoting ourselves to healing through understanding the knowledge that we're taking in, the knowledge that we have taken in, what we're needing to liberate from. It is really about a commitment to staying whole into ourselves during this process, to really not go back on old patterns, old relational patterns, old ways of structuring our lives, essentially externally and internally, and to remember to devote ourselves to this transformative process. And through doing that and wanting to understand, we can have deep, deep insights into the next steps that we're supposed to take in order to continue to self-improve upon. So that is your week. I will be back next week, and I will be talking about all things astrology. I have a show that I'm doing for the Aquarius new moon coming up. I'm doing it with the Zine Witch. I absolutely love being on her show. I'm gonna post that on my YouTube once we're done, but her and I are going to go over that full moon. And I'm really excited. I'm doing some collaborations with her and some other people soon, and I'll be telling you guys about that. We're really wanting to also raise the voices of astrologers who have disabilities. It's not really recognized right now. I know that there has been, and so I believe we're going to start a league of people who maybe are on the spectrum or have disabilities, like even if they are deaf and they do their readings in ASL, like all of these different things. We're really, me and her and a couple of other people are really seeing how we've had clients like tell us how they've asked bigger associations or shows to raise the voices of people with disabilities, and that hasn't been done. And B, who is known as the Zine Witch, is autistic. A few of us have been, you know, have been diagnosed, or we have friends that are astrologers, and there has been this yearning to lift those voices up. And so there will be more things coming out about that later on, because there hasn't been inclusivity. Really, this is kind of a touchy thing, but I'm wanting to update you guys about some of the things I'm working on, but there hasn't been a lot of recognition of these voices. There hasn't been inclusivity. And so we're wanting to start maybe like a league for astrologers who their voices need to be lifted up. There's other people that need to see representation, people who look like them, feel like them, all of these things. And so I will be talking about this later on in the year as it comes into form. But I did want to mention that. And if you have questions about that, about what maybe some of your ideas, if you have a disability and what you would want to see with an astrologer, email me. My website, you can find my email, and I will post a link to my website, and I will also post a link to the written forecast for this week. And the other thing I wanted to mention is, if you're wanting to book a session with me, I say this often, if you can't afford that, work with me, reach out to me, let me know, no judgment, and I can do a sliding scale with you, or payment plans. I don't want that to discourage you. Inflation is crazy. This needs to be inclusive to people as well. Like, if you feel like it would be helpful or beneficial. So with that said, I will see you all next week.